They thought humiliating a waiter was harmless fun. They didn't know he would save them from losing everything. Information is the most dangerous weapon on earth. Not guns, not money. Information. And the most valuable information is almost never protected by firewalls or locked in boardrooms. Sometimes it's holding a serving tray. At 12:47 p.m., inside Marrow and Vine, one of Chicago's most exclusive financial district restaurants, a deal worth hundreds of millions of dollars was about to be finalized. The men at the center of it never noticed the waiter standing inches from them. That was their first mistake. The dining room smelled of dry-aged steak, truffle butter, and entitlement. Soft jazz hummed beneath the clinking of crystal glasses. This was where hedge fund managers came to pretend lunch wasn't work while deciding who would bleed next. At the center table sat Graham Whitlock, age 44, founder of Whitlock Capital, market predator, a man famous for destroying companies and calling it efficiency. His tailored charcoal suit cost more than most people's monthly rent. His watch alone could have paid a waiter's salary for a year. Across from him sat his two lieutenants, Evan Cole, loud, smug, inherited money, Nathan Brooks, numbers genius, socially awkward, permanently glued to his tablet. Graham leaned back, swirling his wine. "It's locked," he said confidently, "ironclad." Nathan frowned. "I don't know, Graham. Horizon Freight's debt structure feels off. The stock shouldn't be holding this well." Graham scoffed. "Retail investors, emotional idiots. They see trucks and warehouses and think real business. We buy the debt cheap, flip it to equity, and own the Midwest supply chain." He smirked. "Then we carve it up and sell the bones." They laughed. That's when Graham snapped his fingers without looking. "Waiter, more wine." The waiter was named Daniel Reyes, 36 years old, tired eyes, plain black apron, shoes worn thin from double shifts. He had been on his feet since sunrise. None of them knew he once designed risk models for institutional funds. None of them knew why he wasn't doing that anymore. Daniel stepped forward smoothly, uncorking a bottle of rare Bordeaux. As he poured, Evan leaned back in his chair, drunk on arrogance. "Hey, Graham," Evan said with a grin, "if this deal's so obvious, even he should see it." Nathan glanced up, confused. "See what?" Evan nodded toward Daniel. "Let's ask the help." The table chuckled. Graham raised an eyebrow, amused. "Why not? Could be fun." He turned his chair, blocking Daniel's path. "Hey, pal, quick question. We're thinking about buying a logistics company. Big trucks, big warehouses, Horizon Freight." Daniel froze. He should have walked away. He needed this job. His rent was late. His father's hospital bill sat unopened on his kitchen table. One complaint from someone like Graham Whitlock, and he'd be gone. "I'm just a waiter, sir," Daniel said carefully. "I don't really—" "Relax. Just a guess. Buy or sell. If you had $10 million, what would you do?" Evan snorted. "He'd probably buy crypto." The laughter came easy, but Daniel's eyes drifted to the documents spread across the table. Charts, forecasts, debt summaries, and one tiny detail most people never read: the footnotes. Daniel's jaw tightened. "I wouldn't buy it." The laughter died instantly. Graham blinked. "Excuse me?" Daniel set the wine bottle down. "You're looking at projected earnings using optimistic pension assumptions, but their retirement fund assumes a return rate that hasn't existed in over a decade." Nathan's fingers froze above his tablet. Daniel pointed, not rudely, just precisely. If control changes hands, the pension obligation becomes immediately payable. That's hundreds of millions of dollars in hidden liability. Silence swallowed the table. "You're not buying a logistics empire. You're buying a financial sinkhole." No one spoke. Graham Whitlock stared at him.
Not like a servant anymore, like a problem. "Who are you?" Graham asked. Daniel swallowed. "Just the waiter," he said, and walked away. Graham didn't touch his wine. For the first time in years, something felt very wrong. And in the next hour, he would realize a single sentence from a man in an apron had just saved him or ruined him forever.
These stories aren't for people chasing shortcuts. They're for those who've worked, waited, and watched the world change. If that sounds like you, hit subscribe, because this channel tells stories for grown minds. And if you'd like, leave a comment with your city or even just how long you've been watching. I read them all. Let's back to our story. By 3:30 p.m., the Horizon freight deal was dead. Not publicly, not officially, but inside Whitlock Capital, panic was spreading like a silent fire. Graham Whitlock stood alone in his corner office, Chicago's skyline stretched beneath him like a kingdom he suddenly didn't trust. On his desk lay the same prospectus Daniel Reyes had pointed to. Page 97, footnote C. Graham had ignored footnotes his entire career. Now his eyes burned as he reread the paragraph for the 5th time. The pension clause wasn't hypothetical. It wasn't minor. It was a guillotine. If Whitlock Capital acquired a controlling stake in Horizon Freight, the underfunded pension plan would become immediately payable. $380 million, due on day one. Graham's stomach turned. "Nathan," he said sharply into the intercom, "I want raw filings, not banker summaries. SEC originals, now." Nathan was already there, laptop open, fingers shaking. "I ran it twice," he said quietly. He was right. Graham didn't sit down. "How the hell does a waiter catch something my entire team missed?" Nathan swallowed. "Because we trusted the bankers." Silence. Graham exhaled slowly. "Kill the deal. Quietly, no press." Nathan nodded. "Already done." The moment Nathan left, Graham did something he hadn't done in years. He felt fear. Across town, Daniel Reyes was not feeling victorious. He was standing in the cramped employee locker room of Marrow and Vine, hands braced on a metal sink, staring at his reflection. "Idiot," he thought. "You should have kept your mouth shut." He had replayed the moment over and over. The silence, the way Graham Whitlock looked at him, not angry, but calculating. That look scared him more. The shift manager passed by without a word. No yelling, no firing. That was worse. Daniel finished his shift, clocked out, and stepped into the cold Chicago air, his phone buzzing with unpaid bill reminders. By the time he reached his apartment, exhaustion crushed him like a weight. Then came the knock. 3 sharp taps. Daniel froze. No one knocked on his door. He opened it a crack. A man in a plain gray jacket stood there, mid-40s, sharp eyes, no smile. "Daniel Reyes?" the man asked. Daniel's chest tightened. "Yeah?" "My name's Mark Feldman. I work for Mr. Whitlock." "I don't want trouble," Daniel said quickly. Feldman raised a hand. "You're not in trouble." That didn't help. "He wants to talk to you." Daniel laughed once, bitter. "Tell him I already gave my opinion, for free." Feldman studied him for a moment, then said something unexpected. "You saved him." Daniel said nothing. "You stopped him from losing hundreds of millions," Feldman continued, "and now he wants to know who you really are." Daniel's voice dropped. "You should tell him to stop asking that question." The background check took 6 hours. That alone told Graham Whitlock everything. Daniel Reyes didn't exist before 8 years ago. No college records, no early employment, no digital footprint. Just a man who appeared out of nowhere. Feldman finally placed a thin folder on Graham's desk. "This is what I found," he said.
Graham opened it. The first page wasn't a waiter. It was a man in a suit, standing in front of a whiteboard covered in probability trees. Daniel Morales, former senior risk analyst at a mid-tier investment firm that no longer existed. The firm collapsed after an internal fraud scandal. Daniel Morales had flagged the issue months before it imploded. He wasn't charged, he wasn't convicted, but his name was attached. Blacklisted. No one would hire him, not finance, not consulting. He lost everything. Graham flipped pages. Foreclosure, medical debt, career erased. And yet, Feldman added, he still sees the math. Graham leaned back slowly. That explains the footnote. Feldman nodded. But here's the thing. He didn't have to speak up. If you'd gone through with the deal, he'd still be pouring wine tomorrow. Graham asked, why? Feldman paused. Because some people can't ignore bad numbers, even when it costs them. Graham stared out the window. For the first time, the waiter wasn't invisible. He was a mirror. That night, Daniel's phone buzzed with an unknown number. A single text message. I owe you a conversation, not an apology. A conversation. WG. Daniel stared at the screen. He knew this moment. The moment powerful men came offering opportunities. It never ended well. He typed one word back. Why? The reply came instantly. Because someone is bleeding my firm, and you're the only person who saw it coming. Daniel closed his eyes. He had tried to disappear, but the numbers had found him again. And this time, walking away might not be an option.
Daniel Reyes didn't meet Graham Whitlock in an office. He met him in a diner. No glass towers, no suits, no witnesses. It was 6:12 a.m., the kind of hour when only night shift workers and people running from something were awake. The place smelled like burnt coffee and old grease. Graham sat in a corner booth, baseball cap pulled low, black coat instead of a tailored jacket. He looked uncomfortable, like a predator forced into daylight. Daniel stood for a moment, then slid into the seat across from him. "You shouldn't be here," Daniel said flatly. "Neither should you, yet here we are." They stared at each other in silence. Finally, Graham spoke. "You saved me from detonating my own fund." Daniel didn't smile. "I corrected bad math." Graham nodded. "That bad math would have destroyed 400 employees and everything I built. That's the cost of ignoring footnotes." A waitress, young, exhausted, poured coffee between them. Daniel noticed the irony. Graham did not. Graham slid a folded document across the table. A check. $40,000. "Consulting fee," Graham said. "No strings." Daniel pushed it back. "I don't take hush money." Graham raised an eyebrow. "It's not hush money." "It always is." They locked eyes. "Then let me ask you this," Graham said quietly. "Why are you waiting tables?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "That's none of your business." "It is if I'm trusting you with mine." Daniel exhaled slowly. "I warned my firm. They ignored me. When the fraud surfaced, they needed someone to blame, so they let the narrative stick. And you walked. I survived." Graham nodded once. Respect. Then Graham did something unexpected. He turned his laptop toward Daniel. "I didn't bring you here to talk about Horizon Freight," he said. "I brought you because something is wrong with my fund." Daniel's eyes flicked to the screen despite himself. Charts, execution timestamps, trade slippage data. Daniel leaned closer. 10 seconds passed, then 5. Then Daniel frowned. "That's not market noise," he murmured. Graham stiffened. "What is it?" Daniel pointed.
Every time you enter a large position, there's a micro price movement milliseconds before execution. Nathan and his team had stared at those charts for months. None of them saw this. "That shouldn't happen," Graham said. "It shouldn't," Daniel agreed, "unless someone is front-running your trades." Graham's voice dropped. "You're saying someone inside my firm is leaking positions?" "No," Daniel said. "Worse." He tapped the screen again. "Your clearing broker rerouted your order flow to a new dark pool 2 months ago." "So?" "So someone isn't stealing information from your office, they're siphoning it at the exchange level." Graham felt a chill. "They see your orders before they execute. They scalp you for fractions of a cent over millions of trades." Graham whispered, "Death by 1,000 cuts." Daniel nodded. "You're being bled slowly." The diner felt suddenly too small. Graham leaned back. "I have 20 analysts, Ivy League, paid obscene salaries." Daniel didn't look impressed. "They're trained to look where everyone else looks." "So what do you want?" Graham asked. Daniel hesitated. He shouldn't do this, but the numbers were screaming. "I'll help you, but not publicly." Graham waited. "I don't come to your office. I don't sit in meetings. I don't talk to your executives." "Off the books," Graham said. "Off the grid," Daniel corrected. Graham smiled thinly. "Name your price." Daniel thought of his father's hospital bills. "Monthly retainer. Cash." "Done." "And if this goes wrong," Daniel added, "you don't know me." "Agreed." They shook hands. It wasn't a partnership. It was a secret. For the next 3 weeks, Daniel lived 2 lives. By day, he wore an apron. By night, Whitlock Capital bent around Daniel's insights. Daniel worked from a battered laptop at his kitchen table, coffee going cold beside him. He predicted a steel futures pullback days before it hit. He flagged a tech merger by tracking executive travel data. Whitlock Capital surged. Inside the firm, whispers started. "Who's calling these shots? Why does Graham keep overruling us?" One man noticed more than the others. Evan Cole, head of trading, Graham's oldest ally. Evan watched Graham cancel trades Evan had designed, watched profits climb without his fingerprints on them, and he hated it. Then, on a Tuesday morning at 9:41 a.m., the screens turned red. Not normal red, violent red. Alarms screamed across the trading floor. Graham stood up so fast his chair fell backward. "What's happening?" he shouted. Nathan's face drained of color. "Mass sell-offs across all our major positions." Graham's phone buzzed. A single message. "Daniel, call me now." Graham hit speaker. "This isn't random," Daniel said immediately. "This is an attack." "By who?" "I don't know yet, but whoever it is knows exactly what you own." The numbers kept falling. Millions evaporated by the second. Daniel's voice hardened. "Graham, listen to me carefully." "Yes." "If we don't act in the next 5 minutes," he paused, "your fund is finished."
The trading floor was chaos. Red bled across every screen. Phones rang unanswered. Junior traders froze, staring at numbers that didn't make sense. Graham Whitlock didn't shout. He didn't panic. He walked straight into his office and locked the door. "Daniel," he said into the phone, voice razor thin. "Talk." "This isn't a market move," Daniel replied. His voice was steady but fast. "It's coordinated. Someone is forcing price discovery against your exact positions." "That's impossible," Graham said. "Our exposure isn't public." "It is," Daniel said, "to the person doing this." Silence. Then Graham said the name he didn't want to say. "Evan." Daniel didn't answer right away. "That's who you're thinking," Graham pressed. "Yes," Daniel said, "but not the way you think." Daniel's fingers flew across his keyboard in his apartment, charts and logs stacking like a digital autopsy. "Your losses began at 9:41, Daniel said. "That's not when the selling started. That's when your defenses failed." "What defenses?" Graham snapped. "Latency buffers, execution throttles. Someone turned them off." Graham's jaw tightened. "Only 3 people can do that." 2 now. One of them wouldn't sabotage himself. Graham pulled up Evan Cole's credentials. Still active, still logged in. Evan was in the building. Evan Cole stood on the trading floor, calm amid the storm, hands in his pockets, watching. To everyone else, he looked like a captain riding out bad weather. Inside, he was counting. 23 minutes. That's how long until Whitlock Capital breached its margin covenants. After that, banks would force liquidations. After that, game over. Evan's phone buzzed. Unknown. He knows. Evan didn't reply. He adjusted his tie. Let Graham panic. Let him beg. Back in Graham's office, Daniel's voice sharpened. "He didn't just leak positions," Daniel said. "He mirrored your strategy." "What does that mean?" "He built a shadow book. Same trades, same size. Then he inverted it." Graham's blood ran cold. "He's shorting me?" "No," Daniel corrected. "He's crushing you, using your own mass to move the market against you." Graham whispered, "How long has he been planning this?" Daniel paused. "Longer than I've been waiting tables." "Tell me how to stop it," Graham said. Daniel exhaled. "There's one way, and you're not going to like it." "I don't care." "We let him think he's winning. Then we trap him." "How?" "You still have access to the pension clause trade, the one you killed." Graham's eyes widened. "That deal would destroy us." "Yes," Daniel said, "on paper." Minutes later, Graham strode back onto the trading floor. Evan turned, surprised. "Graham!" "Execute Horizon Freight," Graham said loudly. "Full position." The room froze. Evan's eyes lit up. "Are you sure?" Evan asked carefully. "Do it," Graham snapped. "Now." Evan didn't hide his smile. He turned to his desk. Inside his head, alarms rang, but greed was louder. Daniel watched the execution in real time. "Good," he muttered. He took the bait. "What happens now?" Graham asked. "Now," Daniel said, "we show him the footnote." Evan's shadow book mirrored the trade instantly. He doubled down, tripled. He was certain Graham had finally broken. Then the clearing alert hit. Margin call. Not Graham's, Evan's. Evan frowned. Then his screen froze. "What the—" The pension clause triggered early settlement. Evan's leveraged position imploded. The dark pool seized his collateral automatically. In seconds, Evan's gains turned into catastrophic loss. His phone rang. Compliance, then legal, then the bank. Evan's face drained of color. Across the floor, Graham watched. Didn't smile, didn't move. Security arrived quietly. "Mr. Cole," one of them said, "we need you to come with us." Evan turned toward Graham, fury boiling. "You used him. You trusted a waiter over me?" Graham stepped closer. "I trusted the numbers." Evan was escorted away. The trading floor slowly stabilized. Red faded to gray, then green. That night, Graham stood alone in his office again. The city looked different now. He dialed Daniel. "It's over," Graham said. "For you," Daniel replied. "Not for me." Graham hesitated. "What do you mean?" Daniel closed his laptop. "People like Evan don't act alone," he said. "They had backers, infrastructure, protection." A pause. "You won today, but you just declared war." Graham felt a chill. "Then stay," he said. "Come inside, officially." Daniel shook his head, unseen. "No," he said softly. "I work best where they don't look." The line went dead. Graham stared at the phone. For the first time, he realized the most dangerous man in his world was still invisible.
The news broke 3 days later, not on television, not on finance blogs, in a regulatory filing. Whitlock Capital announced a voluntary restructuring of trade execution partnerships. To the outside world, it looked boring. Inside the industry, it was a detonation. Two clearing firms quietly cut ties with hedge funds linked to Evan Cole. A dark pool was suspended pending review, and one offshore entity dissolved overnight. No arrests, no headlines, just silence where money used to move. Daniel Reyes watched it all unfold from his kitchen table. Same chair, same cracked mug. He hadn't slept much. He never did when the numbers finally stopped screaming. Graham kept his word. The retainer arrived on time, in cash, untraceable. Daniel paid his father's hospital bills in full. For the first time in years, the balance read 0. He sat there longer than necessary, staring at the receipt. Graham Whitlock didn't call again. Not because he didn't want to, because he understood something now. Power didn't always wear suits, and the most dangerous allies were the ones who could disappear. Instead, Graham made moves, quiet ones. He restructured incentives, flattened reporting lines, burned old loyalties. Whitlock Capital became leaner, faster, harder to bleed. The fund's recovery stunned analysts. They called it luck. Graham didn't correct them. One evening, Daniel returned to Marrow and Vine. He handed his apron to the manager without explanation. No speech, no goodbye, just a nod. The manager didn't stop him. Some people were never meant to stay. Months later, a junior analyst at a mid-sized firm flagged something strange, a pattern. Trades that moved just before major shifts, not large enough to trigger alarms, too precise to be random. The analyst followed the trail. It ended nowhere. No firm, no shell company, no name. Just clean exits and corrected risk. The analyst closed the file. Some ghosts weren't meant to be found. Graham Whitlock stood on stage at a private investor summit, applause filling the room. Someone asked him during Q&A, "What saved your firm?" Graham thought of footnotes, of a man in an apron, of a diner at dawn. He smiled slightly. "Listening," he said, "to the right voice." No one understood. That was fine. Daniel Reyes watched the summit live stream from a small apartment in another city. Different walls, same laptop. He closed the stream halfway through. He wasn't interested in applause. He opened a new file, new numbers, new problem. Somewhere, someone was making the same mistake again, and Daniel, unfortunately for them, could still see it. If this story shocked you, remember this. The world isn't run by the loudest people in the room. It's run by the ones who read the fine print. If you want more stories where power gets exposed, secrets unravel, and the invisible change everything, subscribe to the channel, like the video, comment what you'd do if you were in Daniel's place, because the next story is already happening.